Hello and welcome to episode 12 of Adult Music, the podcast with music for the mature mind. Here we are in the studio, Russ and Mike.
Yeah, the R&M studio.
The R&M studio. And we're still under prohibition.
Yeah, except that we're not prohibiting ourselves from anything, are we?
No, we're not. We are here.
Today we've downgraded to a nice beer, but we'll...
Yes, we're recording earlier than usual, so we have the fantastic Suntory Premium Malts.
Yes, our salutations to Suntory for their fine adult beverage.
And later we've got some Italian sausages and
Very
steaks
nice. And French wine.
French wine.
Yeah, we should have gone for an Italian wine.
I've got some Italians just in case that doesn't work out.
It'll work. It's Bordeaux. It'll be fine.
But this is the long Japanese Golden Week, as it's called, with a mishmash of holidays that are packed together. And since you can't go out to a restaurant or have a beverage out on the town, we thought we'd just enjoy the afternoon talking about music.
Indeed. Like we do every day.
Now we've got...
That's my whole life now.
That's right. Boy, this takes a lot of research to get going every week, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Basically, the only thing that this podcast has changed about my life is that now I spend an hour and a half a week talking about music on the internet. I'm still listening to all the music that I ordinarily would listen to. Yeah.
But it's helped me focus and also, because I know I'm not going to remember everything I'd like to say, so I take some notes and review things. But we've got a nice, interesting program this week, and before we get into that, I'd like to remind our listeners that in the episode description, you'll find links to Spotify and Apple Music for all the music we'll discuss. And at the top of the description is a link to the full episode playlist. That's all the music in one place on Deezer, where you can follow us at username Adult Music Podcast. If you can't see the full description or list on the app that you're using, please check us out on our host, Podbean. If you enjoy the podcast, please follow or subscribe on whatever app or platform you're listening to us on. If you give us a ranking or write a review, it will help us get listed in the browsing category recommendations, which will help us grow our audience. So if you'd like to contact us directly with any comments or questions, also our email address is adultmusicpodcast, all one word, at gmail.com. Yeah, and well, we've had a good week. We're over 700 downloads now. We're reaching the corners of the earth.
We are. That's
but
pretty
we'd like
exciting.
to hear more from our listeners because they're all over the place. Yeah. And we'd like to know who they are. So please, if you enjoy, if you don't enjoy, tell us anyway.
Yeah, tell us. Well, you can help us help you enjoy it more just by letting us know what you want to hear.
We'd like to hear from you.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going to start early periods.
Should we just dive in?
Well, I meant we would start with early music.
Early music, yes. Okay, we are about as well. This isn't as early as it gets, but this is early Baroque from the beginning of the Baroque era, which was around the year. Well, the Baroque era started in around the year 1600 with the first operas, which were performed in Florence, and I actually visited the place by the Arno River where the first operas were performed, where the whole idea of opera started. Did you know? Opera is the longest continuous art form in the Western world.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, still going. It's still kind of in the same sort of. It's still the same genre. I guess I don't know how that works because it seems to me like drama would be longer, but I guess it changed, or I don't know. I don't know how they figure that out.
Don't know.
But anyway, don't worry. This is not an opera. This is a vocal recital by Lucia Richter, and with Luca Pianca and directing Ensemble Claudiana, and it's an album of music by Monteverdi, Claudio Monteverdi, called Il Delirio della Passione. Okay? Fun fact, by the way, about Monteverdi. Did you know that if he was American, or more accurately German, more really American, his name would be Claude Greenberg. And aren't we glad he's Italian?
Yeah. I didn't think of that.
It's much nicer, okay? All right, Monteverdi. Okay. Now, the album is called Il Delirio della Passione. This is a recital of... It's actually kind of Monteverdi's greatest hits for solo voice album, I think, okay? Because it has a lot of really popular...
It's got...
things that he wrote that aren't madrigals.
Yeah, it's got madrigals, arias, canzonettas, and a couple sacred pieces here, too.
He has a madrigal. I think it has only one madrigal and one sacred piece only, too. It's got Confitebor Tibi Domine, which we'll get to in a moment. All right, this album starts with the opening of Monteverdi's first opera, and really the first successful opera ever performed, L'Orfeo, Orpheus, which was first performed, was composed, I guess, or first performed in 1607 in Florence, Italy, to a group of, I should have looked this up, to a group of people in this, in the palace in Florence. I guess it was the Medici family, I'm guessing, that put this on. Now, she starts, this is Anna Lucia Richter, with the prologue to the opera, in which she comes out and announces herself as the goddess Musica, music. All right, now I want to kind of, this was an opera. I want to put this in a sort of perspective, so that we can kind of really appreciate what's happening here in this. We're not going to hear the whole opera, obviously, but it's just this one part. But you have to imagine that you're in this hall that day. Now, think about what you remember. Now, some of our listeners will be old enough to remember maybe the way the Beatles first kind of appeared on the scene. I've had people tell me, I was born in 1965, so the Beatles were already in existence. Incidentally, I found out that the number one song in the United States the day I was born was "Help" by the Beatles, and I just want to say how appropriate that title is to my life. Anyway, besides ignoring that point, people talk about how there was a pre-Beatles period, and there was rock and roll, and it was all exciting, and then the Beatles came, and everything changed. Okay, I think I personally had a similar experience with Star Wars. When Star Wars came out in 1977, that's all anybody talked about that year. I remember it really well. So something changed, and I think in the 1999, if people were young enough to remember The Matrix coming out in movie theaters with those spectacular special effects, which are now rather old-fashioned, but at the time they were just eye-popping. It was just amazing to see. Star Wars 2, planets exploding. We had never seen anything like this. The Beatles were a sound that no one had ever heard, and I imagine for a lot of people, Elvis Presley as well. Now, in the year 1607, opera was kind of a new thing. Now, there were operas before Monteverdi's Orfeo. Jacopo Peri is credited with the first opera, Euridice, the same story. Eurydice is Orpheus's squeeze, as it were, his girlfriend, who gets bitten on the ankle by a snake and dies, and then Orpheus has to go to the afterlife to retrieve her, and he achieves it, but then he looks back at her, and she has to go back, and then he's torn apart by wild women when he gets in later days. Anyway, that's besides the point. Yeah, I think I forget who it was. Not the Furies, I forget. Anyway, the point is, Monteverdi has the first successful opera because he figured out that the Italian language, in order to get the opera the emotion in the opera to register, say in Italian for him, that the accented sounds in the word, the accented syllables, would have to be also accented sort of in the music. So it should come at some sort of musical peak or on some sort of, beat that, kind of outline that accent. And this really knocked people out. In opera, and as you know today, there are probably some listeners that we have that are real opera fanatics. They really know they're under this. Opera really casts a spell when you're really into it. Now, you have to imagine you're in this hall. It must have been not quite a Beatles-like effect with people going crazy, but the magic spell that this opera must have put over its listeners. This woman comes out. You're hearing this kind of introduction. Now on this recording, it's there's a lot of percussion, which I gotta confess I didn't really like very much. It makes it a little more cheerful than I think it should be, but that's okay. That's just the interpretive decision that Ensemble Claudiana made. For Baroque music, we don't have precise directions of how the music has to be played, so there's a lot of room for interpretation. Anyway, this woman comes out, and in this new style of singing, she announces that she's from the river Permesso, and she has come, this goddess, that she's a goddess, and she's here to tell the story of Orpheus. And I just imagine that the audience must have been under just this incredible spell. Now think about that when you listen to this, okay? It's a really, it's actually very different than a lot of later opera that would come. At this point, the full-on operatic voice that we heard with Lisa Davidson a few weeks ago wasn't in existence. I mean, they had this idea that to sing or to chant, the words would make them carry further in the hall, and this is how opera started. And gradually, these techniques developed to make the voice louder and louder and project further and further. Yeah, that wasn't in existence here, so they just sort of sang in a chant-like way. So anyway, the recording starts like that. With the prologue from Orfeo, really the beginning from Monteverdi. Well, he had madrigals before that, but this was his first really big success. And this is a nice performance of the piece. One of the things about this particular recording, Anna Lucia Richter's voice is very far forward. I kind of wish we could hear the ensemble a little closer, or her just a little farther back. Not enough so that the room noise takes over, but she's very, very close. Now, one of the good things about that is she has this almost flawless voice. The tone is really beautiful, so we could hear all of that. And that's great, but I just kind of wanted a little more balance in this particular, really in the beginning of this whole recital. Once we get past the Lamento d'Arianna, this seems to fix itself, or at least maybe my ears adjusted. I don't know which. Okay, so anyway, we start with that. We go on to a few pieces. Zeffiro Torna, which is Zeffiro is the wind god, and we kind of get this sense of the soprano floating on the wind with this nice kind of undulating sort of accompaniment that she gets. It's a really beautiful and cheerful tune from 1632, much later than Orpheus. A few other tunes, La Mia Turca, and then we get to the centerpiece of the recital, the Lamento d'Arianna. This is from an opera that's been lost called L'Arianna. Okay, this goes through a lot of emotions. It's a real showpiece for a soprano in this type of music. So it might not seem as spectacular as it would have at the time, because we've had so much more opera afterwards. So our ears have gotten kind of like a little spoiled for this kind of music, but it goes through a lot of the emotions at the time. Think of this as sort of like if anybody ever remembers the movie Citizen Kane by Orson Welles. It used all the photographic techniques known at the time, so it was almost like a study film of these kind of techniques. This is actually true of this lament. It uses all these kind of vocal techniques and musical techniques to express emotion that were known at the time. This actually happens in the opera Orfeo too, when Orfeo sings to Pluto to convince him to let him have Arianna back. All right, and so it's again, the voice is just fantastic in this, and it's a shame. L'Arianna, this opera, has been lost. Okay, so we can't hear the whole opera, and with a centerpiece like this, boy, what a loss that is. I would really love to hear all of that. Arianna, of course, is she's stranded on the island of Naxos, and she can't get off, and she's Mrs. Theseus, who has gone off somewhere to do whatever it was he was going to do, and she's lamenting his loss. Okay, the rest of the program goes into we have a Purti Mio, a really beautiful piece from Poppea's coronation, L'Incoronazione di Poppea, a very late Monteverdi opera from 1643, and then we have some samples of other works of his, Scherzi musicali et pur dunque vero. Then we get our religious work, Confiteor tibi domine, rather cheerful setting of this seemingly serious text. I was kind of interested to hear that he had said it this way. That's a late text too, 1641. Then we get a madrigal, the only one on the album. I'm kind of there are four soloists singing, four vocal soloists singing with her, a countertenor, two tenors, and a bass, singing the madrigal part, and then she Richter comes in and kind of sings the solo bit. And we end with two works from Quarto Scherzo delle Ariose Vaghezze from 1624, Si dolce il tormento, Oimè ch'io cado, which are also very good, but we've really heard the key works up to this point. I liked this album a lot, mostly because, well, first of all, it's a nice collection of really some of the best of Monteverdi's vocal works for solo voice in one recording. This is kind of rare. Usually we hear like an entire opera or maybe an entire set of madrigals, and this is sort of a variety piece. I liked the voice. I thought at the beginning of the recital it was too far forward. It's a gorgeous voice. I just kind of wish it had just a little less presence at the very beginning, or at least that the ensemble had more presence. But I feel like that either my ear adjusted or the recording changed. It sounded better to me towards the end. Anyway, for me, this is highly recommendable. What do you think?
This, not being a huge fan of opera or classical vocals in general, I found this to be more enjoyable for me than the Lisa Davidson we listened to before. It's just too overwhelming, that soprano hitting the, climax note in every piece. Just as I mentioned, it's like reaching for a nerve in my head.
See, I don't mind that if the work is written to be sung like that, but that wasn't always the case.
However,
on that recording.
Here I found Richter's voice never overpowering. Actually, I believe I read that this will be her last recording as soprano. Which she's going to change to mezzo-soprano. Okay. But
you have to read into that, look into that a little bit.
I don't know if her, just with aging, her voice is changing.
That's register. Probably the case. That often happens.
Yeah, I found her voice, to me, very easy to listen to, balanced and beautiful. I enjoyed it. As much I enjoyed the ensemble playing. Yeah. As you mentioned, it could have been a little bit more forward, but especially in the first piece, the contrasting vocal and then ensemble sections I thought is kind of a trade-off and going back and forth, and so I like that. And the contrast, sometimes the ensemble is soft and then sometimes spirited. I think the percussion, there's like a tambourine bringing like a dance type of thing to it. So I like the it's a small ensemble, but I really enjoyed the arrangement. I liked the, La Mia Turca, My Turkish Girl.
Yeah.
This has some very interesting pitch play.
Right. It had the Turkish modes.
Yeah. The bending of the pitch there, which you're probably not going to hear, later on in the Baroque period, anything like that. So I enjoyed that.
So he had kind of a Turkish Arabic kind of like an understanding of these modes. These modes at the time. Yeah.
Let's see. The track 8, Porto Miro, I Gaze Upon You. This is the duet with the countertenor, Dmitry Sinkovsky.
Yeah.
Well, I thought that was, really lovely.
Yeah, it was like heart-meltingly beautiful. It was really nice. I kind of was like, wow.
So I actually had to look him up and see him singing, and you see this, guy with a beard with that voice, and you're like, no, this...
Does he actually have a beard?
Yeah,
you looked through his picture? He's not in the CD here.
On a different work. Also, I liked track 10, the Confiteor tibi domine. I liked the vocal and violin interplay here. It's a nice contrast that stuck out on this piece. And the thing that I really liked about the instrumentation most on this is this has cornetto.
Ah, yes.
And okay, so what is cornetto? It's fun to look back at sketches from this period of instruments. It's sort of the antecedent of... no, it's not. I shouldn't use that word, because it's a music that has no modern evolution, an instrument with no modern evolution. In this time period, brass so the trumpet was sort of relegated to fanfare playing because the valve had not been engineered yet. So the trumpets were, limited to set pitches, and so they could play the fanfares. But for playing melodies and scales, you just couldn't do it. Right. So they had the cornetto, which is sort of a wooden trumpet with sound holes, but unlike a woodwind instrument, it has a mouthpiece similar to a brass instrument. And so there's no modern instrument that has this combination. I think, the closest thing you're going to come is something that Roland Kirk invented when he had like all those saxes and a couple of his own instruments. I believe he had something with like a trumpet mouthpiece buzzing into a saxophone body, but that's basically what you have here. And on these two tracks, although as you mentioned, they're after sort of the main meat of the vocal works, but track 12, Si dolce er tormento, and 13, Oime Ciocado, if I'm saying that right. Yeah, listen to the cornetto playing on here. This is some great agility, fast playing with some trills, and it's a sound we don't, you're not going to hear usually recorded. I guess, if you listen to this ensemble, Claudiana.
I was focused on the voice and the text, so I kind of have to go back now. And
listen to that, because it's it's a really unique sound. It's made with a buzzing embouchure, but yet it's playing with sound holes. And now we've diverged into woodwinds and brass, but this is sort of like something interesting. So that was interesting.
The wonderful world of period instruments.
Yes, period instruments.
It really just changed everything.
Whoever, I didn't note the player's name, but he is very virtuosic on the cornetto. So.
Yeah. For the record, I just want to say this is one of the periods of history I would have felt comfortable living in.
Yes.
Even without the current medicine and sort of things available to us.
Yes.
I think, I guess you would have had to be a nobleman. If I was kind of like some peasant working in the field, I wouldn't have been too happy. At any point in history. But, to have been at that audience. I
would have been a cornetto player.
You would have been a cornetto player? Yeah. That would have been, that was kind of like in those days, I guess you're a court musician, you're doing okay. But
maybe.
I don't know. Anyway, I think what I want to say about this anyway is that if you remember the movie Ghostbusters, when
Who Are You Gonna Call?
Yeah, Who Are You Gonna Call? One of the characters says, when somebody asks you if you are God, you say yes. That was the advice he gave. At the beginning of this recording, the singer in the first aria announces herself as a god, and I say, yes, it's so good. I love this. I love this period, really. It may take, for listeners who are unfamiliar with it, it might take a little adjustment, because it's kind of a little unusual sounding, but it's so beautiful. All the melisma. Melisma is when a single vowel is sung on different notes. Okay, you get a lot of this this kind of thing. And
you do that really well. I like when you do
I didn't articulate each one. I just kind of that's my beer voice.
Oh. Well, I like this more than I thought I would.
Right.
And the first time I was like, Mike's gonna pick some more opera stuff I got to listen to. But then, I said, oh, wait, this is cool. And then I listened to it again, and I liked it even more. So it grows on you. Yeah.
Well, like you, Russ, I kind of prefer instrumental music to vocal music. And yet here we are on the podcast. We've done so much vocal music so far. It's kind of surprising, even to me.
It's those damn Grammy Awards that got to us.
No, and it's also just the recordings that have come out they're being recommended, and I'm saying, I have to hear this. And then there's just some sort of things that are coming out. Oh, by the way, to listeners, we've done all these reviews. We've talked about all these recordings by sopranos. We've got some men coming up soon. Don't worry, I've got you people who want to hear the male voice covered coming in the next few weeks. I don't know. I don't know exactly when, but
all right,
we'll see.
Well, that's enough vocalists for one episode.
And that's enough of Mr. Claude Greenberg.
Claude Greenberg.
Thankfully, he didn't emigrate and change his name. Claudio Monteverdi.
Yes.
It's a far more beautiful name. Oh, boy. Anyway, on to the next recording. Boy, this is really... are we talking too fast? What do you think? Am I...
No. We're doing all right.
Everybody okay?
If we drink some more beer, we might slow down.
Yeah. we might go silent.
We might.
You never know.
I can call the caterers whenever we're ready.
Yeah. Okay, now this is a record. The next one is a recording I've had like on the back burner for a long time, and I just never kind of found a slot for it. And this is Edward Elgar's Violin Concerto paired with his Violin Sonata. Now,
and these are on the Erato label.
Yeah, Erato or Erato.
Erato sounds like erotic, which kind of goes with adult music.
Yeah, but Erato is one of the muses, by the way.
That's right.
One of the muses from ancient Greece.
That's probably what's from like Naxos, Erato.
Yeah, well, Naxos is an island.
Yeah.
So, I used to just know all this stuff off the top of my head, and now it's just kind of
They're kind of cool words for record labels, though.
They are,
so it's probably Erato,
Yeah.
Erato, rather.
Yeah, Erato. Okay, so this particular recording of Elgar, there have been a few of these in the past year, but this one is the Renaud Capuçon recording, French violinist, and he's recording the Violin Concerto with the London Symphony Orchestra, conducted by Simon Rattle, Sir Simon Rattle.
Simon, yes.
Yeah, you got to say that. I can't. I'm American.
It's a British thing. Yeah, we don't care.
Yeah, sir.
Good on you, and you know, but there's too many sirs.
I got to call him sirs.
There's too many sirs. You know,
that was actually
isn't it Sir Elton John as well?
That was Ravel's criticism of English music. I think Vaughan Williams asked him at the time, in the early 20th century, there weren't all that many. You know, why aren't there all that many? Great English composers. I mean, there are now, but before that, there weren't. There was Gilbert and Sullivan, and between Purcell and Gilbert and Sullivan, there weren't many. And Ravel's response was, "You have too many sirs." Okay, and I understand that. It's they kind of just elevate people to this high level.
Is Elgar a sir?
I don't know. I don't think so.
I don't know. It's all too.
Yeah, he should be, because he's services to British music. Boy, he's about.
Well, if I could go back in time and meet him, I'd at least call him Mr.
Oh, I just say sir. Actually, my favorite British composer, Ralph Vaughan Williams, is not a sir.
Oh,
so there you go.
Come on, Queen.
Well,
Let's get going.
He's gone now.
Yeah, can you do this posthumously? Or?
But the thing is, she was Queen Elizabeth was. Vaughan Williams was still alive when Queen Elizabeth was.
She's been alive forever. Yeah.
She's been alive for a long time, and in fact, I think he wrote, music for her coronation. Oh, dry mouth. Anyway, excuse me, listeners. Okay. Now, this work is paired with the Elgar's Violin Sonata, a work that I didn't know, and the pianist on this work is Stephen Hough, of all people. Who was featured in our first podcast ever.
Yes.
Okay, so this was a very exciting release for me. And I have to say, it lived up to expectations, and it was a little surprising, too. Now, the Elgar Violin Concerto I'm familiar with from my immediately post-college days. I remember a memorable concert of British music held at the Sanders Theater in Harvard University. I didn't go to Harvard. I went to Boston University, but... I attended this concert, and none other than Oskar Shumsky, one of the great violin prodigies, virtuosi of the 20th century, played it. And there were some luminaries in attendance. It was really a memorable day. And I remembered the work very well, so I was kind of happy to hear it again here. Oh, man. I think I need a drink.
I think you need more beer.
More beer. I'll get that in a minute. Okay. Elgar himself, by the way, was a violinist. Most composers are pianists. Okay, so he had a real feeling for this idiom, and there's certain things about the violin that feature in this. Okay, one of the things when this... Okay, so the Violin Concerto starts...
And this is a extremely long
It
concerto.
Is very long, yeah.
Each movement is very long.
Yeah, each movement is... There were more than 10 minutes long. The two outer movements are almost 20 minutes long. But that shouldn't put you off, because it is very melodic and memorable and enjoyable. Okay, so the opening Allegro... one of the interesting things I noticed right away is Simon Rattle keeps the phrasing crisp and disconnects the orchestral passages. Okay, so it doesn't all flow like a romantic work normally would, and like other performances that I've heard of this work do. So it's almost like he wants to isolate each orchestral phrase, which I found kind of interesting approach. I haven't really figured out why he chose this approach, what it does for the soloist, but they stand out. Okay, these phrases stand out. Maybe they make it a little more digestible for the listener. He doesn't get lost in the whole flow of the music, or she. Okay? And then Capuçon enters, and it takes a while for the violin to actually be heard in this work. It finishes a phrase for the orchestra.
Yeah, there's I noticed that when the violin enters, then it has this kind of flowing lines that start, and you're kind of wondering. And then there's these rising triplet figures, and then the presence is exerted more. And then you get a really kind of soft, lovely minor rubato melody from the violin, and it takes a while for it to gain in intensity, and then it sort of transforms into a lot of 16th note figures, and then you realize, wow, this is a really technically advanced piece to play.
It is, and it comes from as I said, a composer who really understands the violin.
And the other thing, listening to, there's a lot going on here, and so I looked up the score and analysis. So there's as many as 6 themes being developed in this first movement. There's a lot. He was trying to do a lot in one movement.
Well, he's got the time for it.
Yeah, for sure.
Actually, I want to say Capuçon's entry is a little surprising. It's slow and rather lugubrious. Usually, the violist will, I don't say usually, but on the recordings or the performances I've heard, the violinist will sort of end that orchestral phrase with some kind of like it's kind of like this heartfelt sort of statement, okay? But Capuçon is really dragging this out a bit, and he manages to get a lot of emotional depth out of the line, sort of in the way that we talked about with Stephen Isserlis on the Proust recording of the Proust Salon kind of pieces a few weeks ago. This is a violinist who has a lot of experience and can really draw a lot out of the violin. I was kind of interested in that. He keeps that up too. He keeps that tone. Every note he plays registers emotionally, and then he starts getting into, like you said, the figuration. Well, that's a different story. That's all about the phrasing and maintaining the tone while doing that. This is a pretty dry recording. There's a lot of detail because of that.
What I wanted to say about the record, I put this at the end, but since you brought it up, the violin seems to be rather close mic'd, which it's generally good because you can hear in clear detail what the violin is doing. It's never cloudy, and so the violin sounds great. I was a little bit disappointed in the orchestral recording. I sounds to me that I guess this is a studio recording.
I'm guessing, yeah.
There's hardly any spatial feeling in here. You can hear everything clearly, but there's no sense of space, and so it's a really sort of flat sort of
it's
canvas
a very close
to me.
Recording, yeah.
And there's a little bit. Of course, when we get into the sonata with just the piano and the violin, I found that the balance there was much, sounds sort of fulfilling to me. But I was hoping for some more sort of spatial dynamics with the orchestral parts so that I could hear the instruments, sort of separated. But I didn't really get that in this recording. I'm
thinking, the violin concerto is really the centerpiece here on this recording. That's the one everybody wants to hear. But I really feel like it kind of dwarfs the piano, the violin sonata, which kind of sounds a lot. It's shorter and it's less lush, needless to say, because it's played with a piano. I really feel like they should have reversed the order of the pieces to make a good program. Just go from small to big rather than big to small.
Then one interesting thing. I don't know if you have more to say about the first movement.
I just said it. Performance-wise, it's really great, and it's a little unique too, just because of the conducting. They took a rather interesting and sort of new approach, I thought, to this, and I thought Capuçon He's a French violinist, and he's got a British orchestra playing behind him, and then he's got a British pianist accompanying him in the sonata. So I thought that was a wise choice. So he gets the feeling of the British idiom in there. He sounds like he's on top of this piece, though. It doesn't really sound like there are any like issues with idiom. He knows what he's doing. Okay. I want to say, okay, that's about it, the first movement.
What I thought was interesting, then when the second movement comes, I thought, well, something here is very different in mood and tonality, so I thought, and so I went over to the piano just to check out. Of course, in this period, the music often changes keys and, moves, it's tonal music, but it's rather freely constructed. But I noticed that the second movement is in B flat. Yeah. Which, since it's a B minor concerto, it's kind of a strange choice for the new tonic. But it does really change the mood. Right. And so it's so much so that I wanted to figure out why, what exactly had changed here.
Yeah, half a step down is kind of, that's kind of,
the mood, I don't know if it warms or something, but this second movement is, it's very sort of song-like with a emotive melody, the andante, and very enjoyable as well.
And again, that Capuçon Capuçon tone really brings us through. It's you really, this is a violin sound that it's a pretty big sound. And you really can hang on it and really just revel in the lushness of it. It's really nice to hear in this place. And then in the third movement is more dramatic once again. I want to point out something about the third movement, and I know this because I read about it and because I've actually seen this performed live in a small hall. There's a technique and that only of a composer who plays the violin would come up with, and you can hear it. At about the 10-minute 53-second mark, if you check out the recording on the third movement, the violin section of the orchestra rubs on the neck of the violin without playing. It just kind of makes this kind of sort of rustling sound. Before that, they play on the bridge, so it's kind of like this kind of ghostly sound, and this kind of like brings that like down in volume another level. It's a really interesting effect, and I kind of like the way it registers here, and I think this is the reason for the dry recording, so that moment registers. It's really noticeable here. It actually sounds louder than it usually does.
Yeah, it could be hard to capture in a hall or something.
Yeah, normally I don't even notice it on the recording. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that part happened, and But here it's you can actually if you know what it is, if you've seen this piece played live, you'll notice it when it comes up. It's present, let's say. Okay. And that's what I said. It registers clearly on this recording. It's okay, and yeah, the piece ends in a.
Yeah, you can hear
dramatic way.
You can hear here that the third movement is very technically difficult.
Yes,
it's got a lot of very fast arpeggios, double stop sort of techniques.
Yeah, and by now the violinist has been playing for a good half an hour. You have to keep in mind.
But thematically, it does revisit some of the things introduced in both the first and second movement. So if you listen carefully, you can hear those things carried over. And then it has a very kind of interesting cadenza that's accompanied. So, in some works you'll hear the orchestra will pause and the violinist will play their own cadenza. But here the orchestra keeps playing behind it. That's just when you think it's going to hit the huge climax, then you have this kind of cadenza, which is kind of interesting. And
I'm sure it's composed by Elgar too.
Oh it's very much
at this point they wouldn't allow the violinist to in the early 20th century. They wouldn't allow that to happen. Yeah.
So it was an interesting compositional choice to have it ended. So very. It's a long piece.
Yeah, it's very long.
I listened to it a couple times, which took a lot longer than a normal concerto. But yeah, it's very satisfying. And if you consider all the elements, this is a great composition.
Yeah, just a historical note that composers from the earlier classical and early romantic era expected the soloist to come up with the cadenza himself. But really, since around Beethoven's time, Beethoven still expected the soloists to come up with the cadenza, but he wrote a few of them out himself. Composers got more and more controlling in the romantic era. As you can imagine, they were fanatics. The music had to be played just so. Right. And this really reached its peak in the 20th century, where the composer was like a dictator and you had to do what he said. All right.
Even to the detriment of your health.
Yes, even to the, yes, that is true. And then it was composers. If you're wondering why there's so much odd music after that, like John Cage, it's to get away from that dictatorial control that composers gained. Now, the dictatorial control was not necessarily a bad thing for music. It gave us some incredible orchestration that otherwise wouldn't have been possible. People just wouldn't have followed these wacky rules otherwise. But yeah, you don't want to be dictated to. After all, we're Americans, right? All right. Anyway, following this work comes the Violin Sonata. Now, this was the first time I had ever heard this work. I mean, I knew the concerto. It's pretty famous, and it's massive. And the Violin Sonata is relatively small.
Yeah, I was surprised reading about this that it's actually not one of his more popular works.
It's a nice work. Yeah,
and I thought it was very nice.
It is. It's fairly short. The pianist is Stephen Hough, a great soloist himself. Yeah,
and I thought that I don't know how much they have played together or rehearsed, but
I don't think they've ever played together. But who knows, though?
Especially in the second movement, I thought the synchronicity, the Hough, we often listen to him as a soloist, but he's a great accompanist here, and he's really in perfect step backing the violin. So they have a really good sort of musical bond with each other going on here. And he's really helps to build the intensity in here with these kind of chiming chords that he puts there. So I thought it was a very good pairing, these two.
Yeah, and again, I think Stephen Hough, being British, kind of like brought that kind of British. Elgar really is the most British of all composers, and he sounds British. If you think of the Pomp and Circumstance marches, I mean, how more British can you get? They play one of them at even American graduation ceremonies. Yeah. They're very ceremonial sounding, and so they get that that sound here. I should mention that Stephen Hough is probably my favorite pianist. Him and Stephen Osborne, I can't decide. I go back and forth between the two, but those are my two favorite current pianists that are before the public today. And in fact, I love a lot of other ones too, but I'm gonna plug for them anyway. After the concerto, though, this kind of comes on. I think
you might want to listen to this first,
or you might want to just turn the recording off after the concerto and go back and hear the sonata the next day when your mind is clear, because it's such a contrast in sound, and the sonata sounds really small compared to the concerto. So I think you want to hear it with clean ears. This should be heard like in two parts, I think. Take a break between the concerto and the sonata. The sonata is well worth hearing, and this is a pretty great performance. Capuçon is just fantastic all the way through, and Stephen Hough, of course, I just love, and he's really great here.
And the ending is, well, I found the third movement, the Allegro non troppo, which is fast but not too fast, right? The harmony is really interesting here, and then it switches to a major key ending, so the mood at the end is sort of uplift is kind of surprising to me, and then it doesn't go out with a bang. It's kind of actually just the statement is done, and so the piece just ends. But yeah, enjoyable piece. I'm surprised that it doesn't have a big following among Elgar's pieces or violin sonatas in general, because it's enjoyable.
Yeah, violinists, get out there and play this piece. Yeah. Maybe it's because British music tends to have really British sounding qualities to it, but I think they're becoming fairly universal now. People can play this.
Sure.
Start playing it, students. Okay. Anyway, highly recommended recording. This is really fantastic playing from Capuçon, and his accompanists, if you can call them that, they're kind of pretty important in their own right, are both fantastic as well. Stephen Hough really matches Capuçon in intensity in the violin sonata. Well worth hearing. Really great. Okay. So there you go. I don't know about one of my recordings of the year, but probably one of the recordings of the year as far as critics go. And there you go. All right. Next, we have some contemporary music. Wait, don't go away. It's actually really good. People give contemporary music a bit of a, it's a little harder to listen to, they say, but I don't really agree with that. I think we should be listening to this. It's really where we are now.
Well, yeah, some of it I really enjoy, and other ones not so much. Here, I was rather amused by this.
Okay. Well,
next one.
Some of it you don't enjoy. Well, it's challenging, Russ. It's challenging.
It's challenging.
You have to accept the challenge.
Yes.
This is not challenging music. Okay.
No. This you can approach and make some interesting, enjoyable, and humorous observations with.
Oh, okay. I'm interested to hear what those humorous observations are, because I kind of liked this. Okay,
let's let it fly then. This
is from the Chinese composer, I guess American composer. He was born in China, Bright Sheng. Okay, it's his violin concerto, another violin concerto called "Let Fly," which is really 3 movements cast as one movement. It's continuous. It's a continuous 27, 28-minute piece. But there are 3 movements sort of in there. You can kind of follow them fairly easily. Then there's a concerto for orchestra called Zodiac Tales. And finally, Suzhou Overture for the Suzhou Symphony Orchestra in Suzhou, China. All of these recordings were made by Chinese orchestras in China. I'm just checking to see that. Yeah, they were all made in China and conducted by the composer himself, Bright Sheng. Now, Sheng, he's known as Bright Sheng. He was born Sheng Zhongliang. Okay, he was born in Shanghai. Okay, and he studied piano at the age of 4. He graduated from Shanghai Conservatory, and he went on to continue his education in the United States at Queen's College.
Wow.
Yeah. He's one of us. And Columbia, we didn't go to Queen's College, but
unbelievable.
Queens was close by to my native Brooklyn, let's say. And Columbia University, very impressive, okay?
Yeah.
The Ivy League school in Manhattan.
However,
yeah.
We have. Well, what is interesting about this is it's trying to bring in a very Chinese ethnic element into classical music.
Yes,
which he does in various ways.
Yeah, in the violin concerto composed in 2013, it's called "Let Fly," and the soloist is Dan Zhu. Okay. Who I'm guessing is Chinese too, but I should probably look this up. Let me see. No, it doesn't say. Oh well. Anyway, we could probably find out about him in the booklet notes. Anyway, this work combined. It's really a Western sounding work, but it has Chinese elements to it. The Chinese elements are mostly the pentatonic scales and the melody. They kind of recall ancient Chinese song. Okay.
Yeah, sort of folk music scales.
Yeah, Chinese folk music.
This one, he does like brass a lot, which is nice. Yeah. So there are some nice brass interludes, lots of low brass in this whole CD, and some melodic woodwind passages. But actually, I much prefer the rest of the program than this violin concerto because.
All right, well, yeah.
Well, go ahead.
Well, I just want to say it's a very immediately appealing piece. So if you're one of these people who is kind of like apprehensive about listening to contemporary music, you can feel no fear about this. Very easy on the ear and rather enjoyable too.
Yeah, it's being all in one movement, really. There's a lot of contrasts in here. That makes it very interesting. There's not a lot of continuity. At least I listened to it 2 times. I still wasn't getting the full connection. There's actually a very cinematic kind of middle section. It sounds very soundtrack-like, and there's a huge bombastic drum part. It actually shook my house when I was listening to it.
I remember that.
Yeah.
It's kind of it's sort of, if you think about the Beijing Olympics, the opening ceremony with those big kind of percussion thing. It was sort of those.
Yeah, but it's in the middle. It's not a climax to the end of the piece. It's in the middle. Right. The thing with this piece, though, in contrast to the Elgar that we just discussed, is there's several sections in here that are focused on the extreme upper register of the violin. And this is really like a squeak festival. And at one point I thought I was going to be like attacked by a horde of wild rodents or something.
Yeah, not the violinist's fault. He's got a good tone. This is what he's being
and then I looked as I was experiencing this, I looked and I saw, wait, there's another piece about mice. Will these rodents be coming back to kill me or something? So that part, it comes earlier, and then after a quieter section, after the drums, there's those squeaks come back, and that was getting on my nerves a bit. All right, but it was a new sound, and I sort of appreciated that. I'm always kind of happy to hear something I don't expect, really, in a work like that. I would have named it, "Let the Rodents Fly" or something like that.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because the next piece is called it's a concerto for orchestra, and it's called Zodiac Tales. Now, the zodiac he's talking about, of course, is the Chinese zodiac, which features a new animal every year for a 12-year period. And the first one he does is the dragon, the god of rain, which is the dragon. And these kind of remind you, talk about brass. He is a composer who likes brass a lot. This reminded me of the opening of the Sinfonietta by Janáček, right?
Similar to that. Yeah. My listening note here says drunken brass opening with stabbing strings.
I thought it was really cool.
You really feel like the brass section was drinking beers when they played this. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's good to hear loud brass like that. It makes me kind of happy.
And it's very brass, and then it continues with brass, both sort of low brass and high brass, contrasting lines. And then I wrote cataclysmic ending notes with gong, of course.
You have to have that gong.
There's a couple pieces in here where the gong comes in. So it's very bombastic, as the god of rain should be.
As the god of rain should be. I appreciate the gong. I really love hearing that. I remember Debussy really loves just Chinese music,
Orientalism,
the Asian music in general, pagodas, and he also had the gamelan. He used
the gamelan,
Actually, he used the gamelan. Well, no, this would make sense. The gamelan sound in his piece Pagodas for the piano,
right?
It doesn't sound like a gamelan, but it's sort of it's trying to evoke that atmosphere. All right, second movement. We have a few short movements coming up. The next one was of Mice and Cats. This one started quietly and got a little bombastic. Do we know the story of the mouse is in the Chinese zodiac? It's one of the
but the cat is not. The cat is not, and so he the album notes he describes these, but there's really no insights musically. It's rather more
they just
sort
give you a
of fable-like. So
what he's after.
What you get here. You've got these sort of undulating low strings that sort of, I guess, represent the mouse and cat, maybe the mice running, and then you have these brass staccato jabs that maybe is the cat attacking, and then there's like these very loud descending strings with more brass jabs, and then
it gets a little more violent towards the end.
I wrote brass and drum battle to the end with this very. It ends with this ascending string line that leaves you in suspense. Like, did the cat catch the mouse or something?
Well, apparently he didn't, because the mouse is still is in the zodiac. He kind of got in there. So the reason why the cat didn't get in the zodiac is because when the I guess the who was it? The sun god? He says it in the notes. I'm not going to look it up now. But was choosing the animals to be in the zodiac. The cat was sleeping, and the mouse, who was friends with him, didn't wake him up. So he kind of the cat is not included in the Chinese zodiac for that reason.
Then we've got the third movement, the three lambs.
The Jade Emperor. I'm sorry, the Jade Emperor. He was a godlike figure in Chinese mythology. Did not, the mice kept the cat out of there. All right. The next movement is Three Lambs Under the Spring Sun.
The Spring Sun. This is a very short but pretty movement.
Yeah.
Nice flute and clarinet melody, and then more woodwinds coming in. It's focused on the woodwinds. It's nice. I like this one.
How does this figure in the zodiac, though? There aren't any lambs.
I guess this is
a sheep.
The sheep, the goat, not the not a sheep, but a goat, I guess.
All right. The next movement, the fourth movement, is a little longer, and also this is it's called the Elephant Eating Serpent, meaning the snake. And this is my Chinese zodiac sign that I was born in 1965. And I got to say, Maestro Sheng doesn't draw a very flattering picture of the snake.
Yeah, this is an odd one, too. It's got very kind of heavy, bowing rhythmic strings that build an intensity. And then more brass trumpets with flutter tonguing, like
that was kind of
interesting.
That was nice. I liked that.
And then there's a very heavy. It's kind of a march to the end almost, where the serpent is eating the elephant, I guess.
But in his the serpent is in his program notes. The composer says that the serpent is known for its ability to swallow bigger objects than the size of its own body. And here's the part that got me. Thus, a Chinese metaphor describing a person's extreme greediness is a serpent who craves to eat an elephant.
Oh.
Does that mean me? Is he talking about me?
No. Somebody else we know. Somebody else we know.
Now I'm going to have to ask you who that is. All right. Well, I am the year of the snake. What's your? How about you?
I think I'm dog.
You're the dog. Okay, you're the dog. Okay. It is a good year. I think this year's a good year for the year of the snake. For the snake, I seem to remember that. We're in the year of the cow now.
Well, speaking of dogs,
we're recording in 2021, by the way, just in case you're listening to this years in the future.
If you're listening, if you find the digital chip, all that's left of our civilization, this was
which could happen.
Yes, 2021.
Yeah, 2021.
When I'm long and buried into the next movement, being born in the year of the dog. Movement 5 is the tomb of the soulful dog.
Hey, you get a movement too. How about that?
At least if I'm a dog, I want to be a soulful dog.
Yeah, you would be a soulful dog.
So this one,
that'd be a good nickname. You soulful dog.
So like if you had a dog, you'd have to give him a soulful name.
That's what I'm going to say to you from now on. You soulful dog.
Well, thank you.
All right.
This one has the most obvious Chinese influences, I thought, because it's I guess in the form it's built on a Buddhist chant.
Yeah, it's really beautiful.
Pasquale on a Buddhist chant. It's very slow, but it explodes midway with some cymbals and very dissonant brass parts into these big string sections, and then it returns to the original melody, but having a very sort of Chinese-influenced sound to it. Yeah,
Sheng, I think we mentioned this earlier, but Sheng's whole approach is to marry Western harmony with Chinese themes. So it's an interesting project. Elliot Carter did something like this, by the way. He tried to get European and American sort of ideas together, and it wound up with not sounding the same, but with something similar. Things that didn't quite fit, but it made like a musical statement, And the last movement, actually, I noted that I liked this one the best. The Flying Horses. This one, I personally like the first movement the best.
I like this one because it starts with this very dark, ominous, low brass intro. Then we've got some sliding brass added to that. I think I heard an English horn there ever so briefly before it goes into these majestic brass features. The tempo increases, rising string lines. Then there's lots of drums and cymbals, and it really sort of charges to this big climax, the flying horse.
Yeah, the flying horses.
It's a very majestic ending piece, I thought, and so it took me out with a bang.
Yeah, goes out with a bang, as does the Year of the Horse generally.
Yeah.
All right.
You can get raw horse meat here in Japan, by the way, for our listeners.
Oh.
Yeah, bazashi.
If anyone's interested, pay us a visit.
Yeah. Woo, come on over.
Oh, my God.
Giddy up.
Yeah, we just lost our entire American audience. Oh, boy. Not that we eat that, okay?
I've had it a few times. I like it.
Have you?
Yeah.
Horse sashimi, they call it, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know that I've ever had that before.
Oh, really?
I'm not going to seek it out, though.
It's better than the whale.
I like horses.
Yeah. Do you?
Yeah. I like cows, too, but I eat them. I don't know.
Yeah.
Go figure.
Well, yeah.
Anyway, the last work on this is the Suzhou Overture. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Again, I have no experience.
I think it's more
Suzhou. Okay.
Yeah.
I have no experience with the Chinese language. Apart from the random things students have said to me.
So I guess reading the notes,
occasional Chinese students,
he wants to create a portrait of this Suzhou as an ancient city that has become also a modern metropolis, and he wants to show that transition, or
the contrast. I think would be the better word. Yeah, because both sort of exist side by side.
Yeah, or if you see it as like starting in history and coming ancient to modern, and I think the piece does it very well. It begins with these slow, I don't know if this is a word, but I made it up anyway, Chinese-esque melodies. They're very pentatonic kind of things in the strings and woodwinds. Then it does swell, and more instruments are added. We've got some nice muted trumpet and a pizzicato string section, and then it starts to build in excitement and tempo, rhythmic with lots of percussion. It's like sort of now you can feel the beat of a modern city,
right?
Industrialization, pollution. Yeah.
Well, I suppose pollution too.
So it really gets the beat going, and it ends with a gong.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, the ending is very different from the beginning, so you're sort of transported either through time or maybe I saw it more as a transition, but it could be a dual characteristics of this place.
Yeah, whenever ancient cities are portrayed, they're always sort of idealized as these kind of like just places where people just lived and worked, but they were probably more polluted than a lot of modern cities.
Yeah,
and we don't ever get that sense of that. I like if you like a detective, if anyone out there likes detective fiction, there's
I do.
Lindsay Davis writes about ancient Rome. He's not really a detective, but her character.
I read 3 of these.
Falco, Marcus Didius Falco, yes. And she really goes out of her way to talk about how disgusting ancient Rome was.
Yeah. What's the name of that?
Look at it today; it looks fascinating, but at the time, So those are enjoyable books. Lindsay Davis, write that down to put that on your reading list.
Yeah,
okay, worth your time. All right, and what do I want to? Is there one last thing I want to say about this? Bright Sheng recorded on the Naxos label, and they have released a lot of his music. They get on these projects where they'll release American composers, and this is on the 21st Century Chinese Classics series in Naxos. So I guess there are other Chinese composers on it. But Sheng has quite a few releases on it. There are 4 or 5, I think.
Wow.
Okay. Maybe more. I didn't really go through them all. But this is a composer where I want to urge listeners to just hear this. Give it a listen one time. We'll provide you with the link. It's well worth hearing.
It's accessible for modern piece, but it's also quite entertaining.
It's entertaining. It's not really challenging. It's not challenging on the ear, really.
No.
And if you're in this coronavirus time, you can't travel. This is the next best way to do it.
Yeah, better than a slow cruise.
Yeah,
to China.
Better than being shanghaied.
Yeah,
as they say.
Yes, for sure.
Boy, those words are going to go out of the language, aren't they? To be shanghaied.
Yeah, we may be banned for just mentioning
Yeah,
that.
well, I don't think the algorithm will pick that up, but listeners might. Anyway, there we go. We're older. What do you want from us? We were exposed to all of this.
That's right.
There you go. Speaking of being exposed, on to jazz.
I
don't know what that has to do with anything, but here we go.
That's right. On to jazz, and keeping that string theme thing going on here.
It's a string thing.
Yeah,
today.
string thing. We had violins to start with, and now we don't have violin jazz, although that exists, but we're moving over to the guitar, and we do have some unique guitar recordings.
Yeah, how come no one ever wrote the air on the G string? Why is that? Come on, composers, let's go.
I don't know why. Why didn't do that?
Air on the G string. I want to hear it.
Yeah. Well, actually, we've got extra strings and things here. But to begin with, we have sort of non-guitar guitar playing. What do I mean by that? Well, we have solo ballads on the Sony Masterworks label by Mr. Pasquale Grasso.
Yeah.
Yes.
I want to mention, this is on the Sony Masterworks label, and they're kind of notorious for not having anything on, digital media. And yet these albums are all on digital media, but they're not on CD. Yeah. Why is that?
They're not on CD, and until now, they weren't really much. Well, they weren't on Deezer until this album. I think may have had them on Apple. So, I mean, come on, Sonny, what's up? Do you want us to buy this or just not listen to them at all? No. What's your strategy?
I don't know what's going on. Anyway,
if you don't know, Pasquale Grasso is kind of a youngish. Well, everyone's getting young compared to me now, but he's about 30-year-old sensation from Ariano Irpino in the Campania region of Italy. Now he's making his home in New York, where he's an up-and-coming player, and lots of guitar players know about him. Pat Metheny says that he's one of the most significant new players that he's heard in many years. And the reason is he doesn't sound like Pat Metheny.
like other guitarists.
Yeah, like other guitarists, who seem to be a mixture of Pat Metheny, John Scofield. Maybe they get some of the ambiance of Bill Frisell or something. But Pasquale comes along, and, what is he doing that's so different here? It's that his approach to guitar is more piano-like. And when you first hear him play, you might say, oh, this sounds like guitar jazz from the 40s or 50s. And yeah, the tone quality does on this really big French hollow-bodied instrument and he plays this material, and he plays it like Bud Powell would play the piano. So he doesn't sound like Joe Pass or Barney Kessel or some of those players. You have to listen a little bit deeper to see what he's actually doing here. Now this is his vein. It's very much in the traditional style of jazz, and he's recorded a number of albums here in the past few years on Masterworks. He's got the solo Bud Powell, solo Bird, solo Monk, all these bebop things, solo standards, and now here, solo ballads. So he's got another album with solo holiday songs.
I'll have to hear that.
Yeah,
one.
Christmas songs in this sort of thing. So all of these are sort of in that same sort of block niche of traditional bebop jazz as guitar jazz solo performance. One other album that you will find on streaming that I can recommend is a dedication to the great jazz harmonica player Toots Thielsman, wonderful player who all modern harmonica jazz players, I say all, however many there are, they all pay a debt to him. But this player who does really nice work with him as an ode to Toots is Merci Toots with Ivonic Prene. That one's widely available, and it's nice to hear Grasso in combination with some other players, because most of the things here that you'll see on these other albums are just him in his solo performance. And so what do we get here is Pasquale being really Bud Powell on guitar. And he's playing all these standards really well with amazing technique. So he I guess his father was not a musician, but a collector of jazz music. So he heard these piano albums by Bud Powell and others when he was young, and that sort of formed his concept. And he realized in order to sort of take these ideas and implement them successfully on guitar, that he was going to need some kind of special technique. So he also became accomplished in classical studies. And you'll see that if you watch his amazing technique. And so he successfully adapts this approach from that period onto jazz in the modern era, of jazz guitar rather. And so we've got an album of all these standards here, and you'll know all of these tunes. We've got Embraceable You, Over the Rainbow, These Foolish Things, Smoke Gets in Your Eyes.
Yeah, I really like that one. Smoke Gets in Your Eyes. Good tune.
That's
Jerome
right.
Kern.
Nothing romantic. I think when I had a stogie outside, that happened to me, but I don't remember anything romantic.
Did Smoke Get in Your Eyes?
Yeah, it did. And well, actually, when I was just last time I barbecued, I think I had some smoke in my eyes too. But, Someone to Watch Over Me.
Ooh, Gershwin.
Yeah, that sounds a bit like Big Daddy State or something.
Yeah, it's nothing
whole new
Orwellian
meaning,
about this song. It's a Gershwin song. It's really great.
Yeah, it's a nice song. Darn That Dream. Body and Soul, Don't Blame Me, When I Fall in Love, and Every Time We Say Goodbye. All these great American songbook standard jazz songs. And he plays them all incredibly well with very nice arrangements. I think the standout one for me is Over the Rainbow, because he makes this really interesting new introduction. But they're all done really well. And the thing is with these, you really have to, this is part visual. You really want to watch what he's doing here, because to appreciate this sort of piano-like adaptation, you have to see what sort of physical positioning of the hand is necessary. So I'll include the YouTube video for Over the Rainbow here. And when you watch this, you'll see that his left hand is like some sort of intergalactic arachnid.
Yeah.
It's a spider attacking the fretboard. Or like I've seen other bass players exhibit this, but their hands look like almost some sort of amorphous amphibian sort of thing. You wonder, how can his joints be in all of these positions at once? It's pretty incredible to look at, and I don't think many people will want to try to copy it. You might end up with some severe arthritis or something. But he has amazing technique. It enables his fingers to be.
But you'll have a lot of admirers if you can play like this.
Admirers if you can play like this.
They were, the virtuosity is really astonishing. He's really some kind of player. He sounds, really great. He's great.
The only thing with this, after you listen to several of these solo albums, and that is, you'll be wanting to hear, what would he do in an ensemble? What is he going to sound like with some other interaction? Because you'll get into this stylistic sort of one pattern, and really you're in a time machine with this kind of thing. It sounds great and it's wonderful. It's a nice trip, but you know the destination on every song. And so I would recommend, you can listen to this whole album or any of the other releases. They're really wonderful musically and technically, but there's not going to be much new ground covered here. So yeah, I'm ready to hear Grasso in some new format or with some other people to see what else he can
or with another instrument. He's playing the electric guitar on this album, and he uses the same sound throughout. I would have liked to have heard just some sort of variation in the sound. That whole Bud Powell approach that he uses is sort of it gets a bit repetitive. I mean, astonishing as it is. I mean, he's really a fantastic player. Just a little variety would have helped here. But
there's no palette of tone color, so
I think this is an album you want to listen to a little bit at a time to really appreciate what's happening here. But he's only, I believe, like 30 years old. He's got a lot of ways to go. He's done so much to now, and I hope a lot of people get to hear
what he's doing. Come on, Sony.
Yeah, give this a listen. I sort of want to hear some of his older albums, especially the Monk one, and like you said, the Bud Powell one, which is where he gets his inspiration from.
Yeah, and check out the one
really using that style.
Merci Toutes. That's a nice one. It's kind of more playful, and whenever you get to hear really good harmonica, it's always nice too. So,
being a big Monk fan, I'd like to hear that record too. But here you have standards. These tunes.
Yeah, it's a good starting point. You'll see what he can do and where he's been with material that you know. So.
Yeah, I hope we'll hear him with some ensembles soon, though.
I think we will. A lot of people will want to play with him. So, being on the string thing and having seen a few guitar releases, I could not resist doing this one as well. And this one is also a very technically accomplished performer, but I think a little bit more daring in content and approach, and also probably lesser known because he has not crossed the great ocean to America yet, but still remains in Europe. And this we have the recording To Be Frank on Berthold Records by Frank Wingold.
Good title.
Yeah, he is Frank.
He is Frank.
Yeah.
And he's being Frank. How could he be anyone else?
Yeah,
we wouldn't like him if he was somebody else.
No, we wouldn't want him to be, what was Monteverde?
Monteverde or Greenberg.
Greenberg.
We want him to be Claude Greenberg. We want him to be Claudio Monteverdi. So we want Frank Wingold to be Frank Wingold. Needless to say, the alcohol has been flowing here at R&M Studios.
Yes, of course. From beer to bourbon.
Oh boy, it's getting ugly.
Actually, you're getting better looking as the night goes.
That's what she said.
That's what she said. Yeah. That's why I keep my wife drunk all the time. Whoa. I'm telling you.
All right.
Anyway, yeah. So, this is a album also featured in Jazz Guitar Today, as was Grasso's album. But this one is something, I think, a bit more interesting. And who is Frank Wingold? Frank Wingold is a German guitarist who studied jazz and classical guitar at Hilversum Conservatory. Now he lives in Cologne, Germany, and plays in various musical groups. But he is also a professor of jazz guitar at the University for Applied Sciences, Osnabrück, Germany, and he's a teacher of jazz guitar at the Prins Claus Conservatoire. What's the last name? Groningen. I don't know if I'm saying that right. In the Netherlands. So he's a experienced jazz player and a well-respected academic figure in Europe, but we wouldn't care about any of that if his music wasn't also kind of interesting.
And it is.
It is very good, yeah. Now, as far as his influences here, he is both influenced by guitarists. So going back to, say, blues guitarists from the 1930s and 40s, Reverend Gary Davis, Mississippi John Hurt. Also, classical music, you can hear some classical tradition, Spanish influences in his playing. But he also has some piano influences too, not as much as or singularly as Grasso, but you can hear that he quotes Keith Jarrett being an influence, as well as classical composers, piano or keyboard music of Bach and other composers. So you hear all of those incorporated in his style.
Yeah, and he has rather a special guitar here, doesn't he?
Yeah. So he wasn't satisfied with any regular guitar that us mortals would struggle to play with just 6 strings. No, he has not one but 2 7-string.
Yeah, 7-string guitar, and what's the 7th string?
Apparently now I don't know. I have enough trouble with 6 strings, so I never experimented beyond that. But 7-string guitars have been around in various genre and traditions. Well, if you go back to early stringed instruments, some of them have like lots of
like
strings.
800 strings or something.
They're like all over. And what was that Pat Metheny with a 40-some?
I don't remember.
Yeah,
but he played
a ridiculous number of strings, right?
Yeah.
But 7 strings have been used on guitars intermittently, and sometimes that's with an extra high string or low. But here we've got 1 extra bass string.
Yeah.
So that enables him to actually get more of a convincing bass effect.
Which he does. He kind of plays, he isolates the bass line on that. It's pretty amazing.
Also gives you more harmonic possibilities with that. So, and he's really striving for and reaching the ability to play bass, melody, and chord accompaniment all at the same time, or at least seamlessly trading off from those.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like this recording has more than one musician on it, but it does not. Yes, it's all him, and it's not overdubbed either. And he proudly states on his website that there's no overdubs and no retakes. It's just as it is. And you'll hear, if you listen closely to the recording, you'll hear a little bit of uglies in it. There's lots of string noise and some other creaks and groans in there. String squeaks. That's all fine if it's all honest and real, and it doesn't detract from the performance at all. If you would like to hear him in another context, his previous recording is called Entangled Music, and this is trio, so with bass and drums, and this is from 2018. This is also very interesting. I just checked out a few tracks from it, but it'll give you a bigger picture of what he will do in the company of other musicians. But this one serves up plenty of interesting music here. So I'll go through what he's got here. Now, he's got a collection of there's some standards and covers. They're not all necessarily standards here. And then one original. He seems to... he's very modest in including his own composition in his notes about this, that he felt he had something he could include, because then he also includes a series of what he calls improvisations, which are untitled other than by number. And it's not really clear if these were just on the spot improvisations on an idea, or if they had been worked out based on things beforehand. But so his seeing himself as a composer is not a big part of his image, but that doesn't detract from what he's got here. And there's plenty of familiar things here. And what he does with the standards or cover compositions is, rather than playing them in a style that you'll be used to, he uses them kind of as a springboard to create a unique musical environment. But yet he gives you enough of the melody that you're going to recognize the tune, and then that will be a link or a bridge to see what he's doing. So I think he does a nice compromise here. And he alternates between the electric and the acoustic, although the electric that he plays is a very pure tone. There's no effects on it. I think he just uses that because of the extra sustain and the tonal qualities it will get with the piece. So it's not a vast difference in the term of the character. Yeah, for me, that the fact that he alternates between the electric and acoustic made this album more appealing to me than the Pasquale Grasso, just because the sound keeps changing, and that kind of really attracts the ear. It's a little bit of a variety here. Yeah. So we begin with the jazz standard, "The Song Is You," and this is on electric. This one comes right out of the gate with this finger-picking, syncopated arpeggio riff, is complete with harmonics, and then the melody line, chords, and bass. It's just sort of, you're like, who are these guys? No, it's just him. And there's a crazy arpeggio section, and then the melody shifts to the bass, and we're back. It's like a rip-roaring beginning, and you get a sense of his capabilities of moving all over the instrument. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. The melody keeps moving, to different ranges. Yep, it was pretty great. And you see that he's in command of all of these different parts, but he's doing them all at the same time. Then he changes over to the acoustic, and we've got this next track, "My Shining Hour." This is kind of
rubato ballad beginning, and it has like a pedal tone that seems to go through it, but the harmonic section changes. And as he's keeping the melody, he's also very good at counterpoint with another melody in the bass. And it's not just like some sort of, oh, I'm going along. He actually makes really nice melodies in the bass that are complementary to his melody very well. And, is this one guy here?
Yeah, I know. This really is an astonishing record. Astonishing playing, really.
Yeah. And the third track is him playing his original composition, the only one on here, which is called Escapade. His original. This is back to electric. This has some here you'll know that there's another string on the guitar, because you realize it's not possible to do something like this on a regular guitar, because it's a very low bass line that's moving. And this one, the accompaniment to the melodies mixes up the chord styles and the arpeggios in an interesting way. And so, yeah, it's a nice original composition. I'd like to hear some more of his own things. The next two tracks I had highlighted as ones I particularly enjoyed. Number 4 is Joshua, and this is on electric guitar. This is in a more funky vein. The song begins with a repeating bass riff, and then you've got minor melody and chords that come in on top of that, and the 3 distinct parts jump out at you. And I haven't heard anyone do 3 real separate parts since I heard the UK guitarist Martin Taylor, who is one of the few guys I've heard who can he can put a whole band into one hand. And if you look on YouTube, you'll see him breaking this down with the Gershwin "I've Got Rhythm" explanation, and he explains it to you like why don't you understand this? And he shows you how his thumb does the bass line perfectly, while his a ring and pinky finger pull out the melody, and then the other fingers somehow get the chords in there, all miraculously in sync, as a whole band in his hand. And you'll just put your instrument away and never want to play again after you see that. Or
it may inspire you and you want to work harder. I always kind of feel like, when you see a great musician, people say, oh, I'm just never going to play again because I'm never going to do that. But I don't know. I think it always kind of makes me want to try harder and just kind of reach a higher level.
But other than Martin Taylor, Frank Wingold here is the closest I've seen to someone making all these parts that seem to have an independent consciousness behind them. So this tune illustrates it very well. I also liked his treatment of the standard Alone Together. On number 5, he's back to the acoustic here. It starts off with a brilliant harmonic kind of flutter in a Spanish style. And then in this song, he effortlessly trades a high and low register melody lines and a very beautiful playing. So that's very nice. Keeping on the acoustic to the next tune, I'll Be Seeing You. This is into a real swing style. And I think here he really shows the kind of piano playing style more than the other tracks, in the way that the melody is supported by the chords more in a way that a pianist would do than a guitarist. But then he also shows in the melodic areas very much guitar-like runs. So I think he's covering both worlds, guitar and piano sort of treatment. So this is nice. Then he's back to electric. For number 7, Feel Like Funkin' It Up.
I really dug this.
Yeah, this is
cool.
And this is like a brass New Orleans marching. I don't know. I guess he just heard this tune and he liked it. But he takes it someplace else because he gives it sort of a country boogie feel. Yeah. And so he's got this funky staccato bass line. But above that, he puts this kind of country swing melody with these like really sustained country sort of sounds, but they have bluesy bends and trills in them. So Yeah, this one's like stylistically mixing lots of things
he's
together.
He's not really funking it up as much as he's countrying it up, I guess you could say here.
But, he's from Germany, so,
well,
all that American
maybe he thinks
stuff,
it's all the same thing,
it could
right?
be.
You know, no, I doubt that's true.
That's true, but, anyway.
We're just kidding.
It's a lot of fun. Then back to the acoustic, and I really like this treatment of It Might As Well Be Spring, which is a lovely melody and song. He's got some amazing arpeggios that he starts out. Then he brings in the melody, but he still keeps playing the arpeggios. So how many fingers does he have? Is he secretly borrowing Grasso's tarantula left hand and using it here? I don't know.
On his right hand?
On his right hand. Yeah.
It's horrifying to think about.
But then he alternates with these sort of block chords and then these arpeggios, and still he managed to put in a bass line that's intelligently harmonizing the melody. And you're like, how did you think of all this stuff?
Yeah, how can you even do this? I think my poor brain would just explode if I tried to do something like this.
And the final song, titled song, is Pinocchio on Back to Electric. And this one's really rhythmically free. It has kind of interesting harmonization. And again, here he's able to put this wandering bass line that complements the melody really well. It's not just some mechanical progression or something. So he's thinking top and bottom at the same time and creating, something that is, pleasing and intelligent at the same time. So, yeah, nice work with these arrangements, Frank. We really like these.
He's very frank in these.
And
but that's not all. There's a lot more left.
So, yeah, that would be enough for an album by any normal
9 tracks,
human.
right? That's
enough. Call it a day. But he gives us a whole series of tracks from his improvisations, and curiously, the numbers are not sequential, so we start with 3 and we end with 1. I guess maybe the numbers refer to the order they were thought of, but then maybe he just put them in the best order to complement the program.
Yeah, these are improvisations, but they were apparently they're improvised and then he written down, I guess composed, then he probably
it's hard to know.
It's hard to know, because if you call a piece improvisation number 3, obviously you've kind of
played around with it before,
or you've probably written it down after you came up with it.
So it's hard to know how much had been decided or how much was impromptu, but it doesn't really matter. These give you some insight into how he probably creates his arrangements from other material. So yeah, they're well worth hearing. What I would recommend probably is after you listen to these 9 other tracks, take a break. Yeah. And listen to these freshly so that you can be ready to follow his development. So we start with Improv 3. This is a repeating 4-interval figure in the bass, and that becomes the basis for an improvised melody that goes here and there. And you'll be able to see how he develops ideas just from sort of simple motif. Now, next after 3 is number 2. All these improvs are on acoustic, by the way. Number 2 is a sort of Spanish-style opening riff, which he develops some nice melodies out of the implied modalities from those intervals, which is nice. And we've got improv number 6. This is more syncopated with a kind of staccato riff. Lots of fast lines, some double stopping, playing in here, nice technique. It's very interesting. Next, improv number 4. Here, there's kind of a chase of high and low lines of improvised melody that are interspersed with these really kind of dense chords. So you've got some creative melodic and harmonic improvisation. Then number 8. This is kind of something sparse that develops into a minor melody with a bass accompaniment, a little bit mysterious. And finally, we end with number 1. This sort of starts out with another repeating interval that's sort of reminiscent of Over the Rainbow, like a do-do-do-do-do-do-do. And then to that interval, he adds melody and bass. And as he develops it, sometimes that interval will change in the repetition, and then the harmony changes. then he changes the rhythm and it becomes syncopated. And then somewhere in the development, then the interval disappears and you're onto something completely new. But then he brings it back, returns to ground bass, and then, takes us out with that. So if you listen carefully and look at the elements, you can follow the process and see what he develops. And then you get an insight into also how he, worked on the ideas for the standards. So, it's a very highly crafted album. With a lot of technique. And I will include the video, which is called a sampler to this album. And it has a few clips of him playing multiple songs on the album. And another one, just like Grasso, it's interesting to see someone with a 7-string guitar, and anyone who plays
just
guitar
to see a 7-string
like
guitar is pretty amazing. Yeah. I will say about this album, I liked the variety of it a lot. Yeah. It kept me listening, and there were a lot of covers, or a few the original, but after track 9, Pinocchio, he does all the improvisations, and they're a little more abstract. It's kind of like a real jolt, because you don't really know what suddenly everything is unfamiliar. And I kind of felt like these are two albums kind of tacked together. I think for the best listening experience, or to, you should stop after Pinocchio and go back to the improvisations and another listen. Yeah. I think it's better to break this record up to really get it, because I thought that was kind of an abrupt change.
It is. But at the same time, I can see why he did it, because if someone who, probably most people haven't heard of him, if someone just, releases an album called Jazz Improvisations 1 to 9, it's like no one's ever going to.
I think I'll pass on this one, right? But so you just put him in there, and
you have a better chance of,
this is what I can do, and you're already listening. So it's I think that's a pretty nice trick.
At the same time, also, I'm rather happy that he didn't sandwich them between the standards too, because then your concentration would be rather broken up.
That would be odd too.
So in the big picture, listen to the standards, take a break, and then think about what you've learned about this incredibly proficient guitarist and jazz musician, and then come back and listen to the improvised takes for the best.
Anyway, recommended for all the guitar heads out there. These two albums, really great.
Both of these albums. Watch these guys. The common thread is that their approach to playing the guitar is non-standard and also has a lot of piano influence.
And it's amazing.
Yes, amazing. But you could expect no less.
Of course,
from
adult music.
Yes,
we're not going to give you average stuff here. No. Although we might. It depends on what we pick for that week, and it might disappoint us. You never know.
We would feel really bad because
No, we wouldn't. We would just trash it.
But life is so short. Yeah, that's right. We would be over with the review already.
All right. We would just say, this isn't worth listening to.
It's not worth listening to.
Next review.
That would have to be something recommended by a Grammy nominee or something.
Well, or the awards. Or sometimes, the way I kind of choose stuff is kind of, it'll be an artist I like. So I know that I want to hear it. And maybe I won't listen to it first, but I'll just recommend it. And then maybe it'll just be a dud.
It could be a disappointment.
But it's rare that happens. But
and
it has happened before already in the previous 11 episodes.
It has happened.
So I guess it's not so
and it may happen again.
As we think.
It may happen again.
We want to keep you on your toes here on the Adult Music Podcast.
And I'm happy to say that the final album for this week is not a disappointment.
No, not at all.
Actually
we have no disappointments this week.
This one's actually a great surprise because I didn't know this artist very well. And he delivers some very unique things. And the recording is called Natural Habitat.
Yeah.
No, this is not a recording of environmental sounds of endangered frog species or something of that nature, but rather, I believe it refers to the performers transitioning between environments of Boston and New York from his native Florida. And it's on Sunnyside Records, and that performer is the alto saxophonist Michael Thomas.
Alto saxophone, an instrument with a lot of amazing practitioners.
There's so many great
historical practitioners.
Alto sax players, historically and now. So why did I pick this one? I have to confess that because not only does he play alto saxophone, but also bass clarinet.
And you know that turns me on.
Yeah, bass clarinet.
The bass clarinet. I'm one of those guys who, you know, if I don't want to do something, you could just say to me, I have some bass clarinet, and then I'll like change my mind, because I just love that low reed sound. There's something about it.
Not Lou Reed, but low reed.
Well, I like Lou Reed too, but that's a different kind of thing.
I like low reed better than Lou Reed.
Yeah, I do too.
And so I saw this. Wow. And so we've got this album here with the said Michael Thomas, alto saxophone, bass clarinet, Julian Shore on piano, Rhodes piano, and synthesizer, only on one track with those, which we'll mention in a moment. Hans Glaueschnig. It's a hard name to say. Yeah. Glaueschnig. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Sorry, Hans. Anyway, he's playing bass very well, and the easier pronounced Jonathan Blake on drums. And so Thomas himself, Florida-born, now New York-based. He did his undergraduate studies at the University of Miami. He went to Boston to the New England Conservatory to get his master's degree. He's been a sideman to Brad Mehldau, Nicholas Payton, and also he's a co-leader of the Grammy-nominated big band, the Terraza Big Band.
I should mention also Florida-born Brad Mehldau.
Brad Mehldau, yeah. Brad Mehldau. Well, anyway, we'll talk more about Brad Mehldau maybe
in a future episode. No, we definitely will. Yeah. I like Brad Mehldau, and we will be talking about him
sometimes. Anyway, since he apparently Thomas coming to New York in 2011, only 10 years ago or so, but he made a big splash and a big impression, and made it into probably the most competitive music scene in the world in not too long of a time. And also since September 2018, he's been on the faculty at the University of Hartford's Hart School of Music in the Jackie McLean Jazz Studies Institute. So, although it's hard to tell how old he is really, I'm not sure, but he can't be that old. And now that I'm getting old, everyone is young.
Yeah, everyone just seems young to me now. It's really funny how that happens.
It's really funny, yeah. But I like it. You get some gravitas, and then you can just push off some unneeded, unwanted younger fluff,
I guess.
But no need to do that here, because we've got a really cool player. And we've got an album of all original music here. And we're going to start off with Float. And from the first tune, you'll get Thomas's whole basic concept with a really nice alto sound. It's a nice sound when it needs to be, but also can get that edge of tone for tension on the right parts of phrases. You also see that he can really build a solo. He's got a mature playing style that he's not going to release all of his climax. Did I say that?
Release his climax?
What I'm
you
trying
didn't
to
hear
say,
that, listener.
Hear that.
These aren't the droids you're looking for.
What I'm trying to say is that he will extend his musical.
Extend his. Stop it now. Let's just go back to the beginning. We're losing it here. Let's go back and try this again.
He is a mature soloist who will develop his musical ideas at sort of a spaced out rate among the performances. So he saves something for each tune.
Right.
And so he keeps you listening and surprising you with what he can do musically in each song. And that's really nice. So you don't hear everything in the first song and then you're like, what, didn't I hear this before? No, he continually surprises through this album. And particularly in the choices of material here are the work in time signatures and meters, which keeps the listener guessing, and I'm assuming that keep these guys on their toes for performing this. So this first piece, Float, seems to be it's swinging right along, but it's in 7/4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then you're back to that.
Yeah,
so,
I have to say, this is a very subtle album. These things aren't really noticeable the first time you listen. You have to really hear this a few times to pick up on these things. I'll confess, I didn't pick up on them. So
it took me 2 listens.
Carefully.
Took me 2 listens to really get down to what's going on with the time. The other thing, really nice piano player on here, Julian Shore. He contributes a lot of nice solos. One here, especially with lots of space. That's nice. And
that's a name to remember, by the way, Julian Shore. I'm going to want to hear him a little bit more. This is really fantastic, really interesting.
He does a lot of nice things, but what I noticed right here was lots of space. Also, one of these pianists he'll develop a line that as it's ascending or descending will sort of turn on a point and go in the opposite direction where you would expect someone else to extend, with the momentum of the phrase. Yeah. So he keeps you sort of on, pins and needles as to what direction his solos are going. And I always like that in a pianist. So yeah, that's the first track, which goes into the next track called Different Time. And we get some difference here because we switch over to bass clarinet, which was what I was waiting to really hear. And he doesn't disappoint. We've got a nice bass clarinet intro.
And that's what turned me on to this record.
Got that nice tone, which he plays really well. Obviously classically trained, so he's got the full command of the instrument and that beautiful tone. The bass and drums come in softly. We get into a mellow kind of jazz waltz, which he builds up here, again showing that ability to build a solo to a climax really nicely. The rhythm section never overpowers him. We get a nice bass solo. And the bass, his technique and also the sound of his instrument has got that really woody, like when you hear it, you can almost smell the axe into the tree, that kind of, taste that hickory smoke and kind of bass. And nice piano backing, sparse piano chords. Yeah, so we get our first taste of the bass clarinet, which goes into the next piece. Called First.
I have to say, Mr. Thomas is very economical with his song titles.
Yeah. One
word titles, except for
at a stretch for 2 words. Yeah,
2 words is the longest title.
Here we get on First another upbeat piece. This time we're out of the swing. We're into a more even beat. Not really Latin, but just even eighth notes. Nice, again, woody toned, syncopated bass solo. Then we get another expertly built alto solo, just built up to a great climax. And then the character of the piece changes. The beat gets heavier. It sort of turns into, almost like a rock type beat. And then Thomas comes back in and he sort of goes outside, as they say, playing outside of the chord changes with some, dissonant things to build tension, but it's all really calculated to add to the climax of the piece. Sounds really good. The next tune is the title track, Natural Habitat. This one's really a hard swinging piece, swinging along in that kind of post-bop genre.
I can see why he made this the title track. Really. It's really attention grabbing. He builds a solo, lots of changing rhythmic figures, and what's great, if you listen to this piece, listen to the end of the solo. They must have worked on this piece a lot, so when he hits the end, everyone knows exactly that the climax has come, and they hit that phrase with a nice syncopated ending, and everyone is synced to that. It's a difficult phrase, but they all know it's coming, and they all hit that. And it's very cool.
Yeah, really cool. Locks in. And then you get another piano solo and with these changing direction lines. That's really cool. But then it ends up with these huge chord chimes that, sort of like hitting the bells or something together, which is cool.
I love those widely spaced piano chords. Yeah. It's always a good effect for me.
Especially when you end up that way. Dun, dun, and it's like you're out there. And we got a nice drum solo here, back to the head, and you're out with a nice successful title track. Now, the next tune is, for any, I was going to say something, but I'm not going to say
This is
it.
Harbor?
Yeah, Harbor.
Okay,
if you're obsessed with numbers or some kind of challenged in that way, try counting out what's going on in this song. If you can do it, send us an email. Let us know what you get here. We got lots of constantly changing meters. Sometimes it feels waltzy, but it's not really a waltz. Also, the harmonies are really interesting. Yes, it's sort of a little musical problem challenge here. I never really got to the bottom of it. I just like listening to it rather than counting out and seeing it. I'd love to see the chart for it, though,
right, yeah.
so I could see it. But yeah, another really nice piano solo here. Harbor, very good. Followed by Fourth, another one-word title. This one starts as a slow ballad, but he gets out some flame accelerant, I should say, and he pours it over himself until he builds a burning sax solo. Lots of time to build up to this climax, and the other players are, waiting to follow him. No one's in a hurry. And then it mellows out at the end again. A nice build. Then we get to Demise. Wow, what a title.
This was a pretty intriguing track, actually. This one grabbed my attention right away.
This one will catch you with this piano riff at the beginning, which is in another impossible sort of time figure. I guess it's not in 12/8, it's like in 13/8. Maybe there's one part of it that has an extra beat. So in just one of these clusters, you hear that. And so how do you really count it? I'm not sure, but you'll catch that extra tone. And what's cool about this, so the keyboard breaks the normal acoustic piano setting, and then we get Rhodes piano, electric piano in the left hand, and this sort of nostalgic synth lead from, a Moog sound, only in the solo section for the keyboard solo. So you've got synthesizer lead and Moog, or rather Rhodes in the left hand, and then comes in after that with a bass clarinet solo, so lots of interesting things here. And then when the drum solo happens here, it's not an isolated drum solo, but the piano builds the chords through that. So you get this really I won't say it's bombastic in a volume sense, but there's a lot happening in the drum solo here, but you can still follow the harmonic progression because the piano keeps up with that. So this is an interesting track in a lot of ways.
Excellent track. I enjoyed it. It really is a different. It changed the mood that we were hearing up until this time. And
the next one, another. Well, I guess
no words. I guess you ran out of titles.
Yeah, you ran out of titles.
Mr. Thomas obviously isn't being paid by the number of words in his titles.
No. But this one is nice too. It starts out with an interesting piano intro that goes into a free rubato sax phrases. When the piano comes back in, the chord style is very rolling. It's not so. It creates some kind of wavy motion. And then by the time the song gets going, you get some of these kind of intense sax. I guess we don't like to use this sheets of sound. So,
the sheets of sound.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of the sheets of sound. Not the sound, but the expression. Sheets of sound. I don't like that description. I don't think it really gives me an idea of
harmonic wallpapering. I don't know. Anyway. He's
harmonic wallpaper. That might be better. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not an interior decorator either. I can barely name the colors.
It's decorating the interior of my mind.
Yeah. Anyway, he's doing these lines that imply lots of harmonies. Thomas has really good technique, but he's not one to show it off without a reason. But here he lets loose with some lines, as he does in other places, and it shows another aspect of what he's capable of, and so this piece is kind of interesting. And then I take it that the next track was meant to be the actual last album track, although it's not really the last track on all the release versions. I'm not sure what the story is, but this is Two Cities, and I take it this refers to his sort of splitting of his early career between Boston and New York. This one is another rhythmic puzzler. I think I got it almost figured out, but then I felt like the pianist stuck his tongue out at me at the end and said, "You think you got it figured out?" It's a very interesting tune that for most of it, the riddle seems to be 3 bars with 5 beats and then a bar with 6 beats. So just when you got settled into a groove, it throws you off and then you're back into that. And then, although I think it starts out with sax, but we got more bass clarinet in the middle. So we get a final bass clarinet sort of section here. Another great piano solo. And as I said, when you get to the end of this rhythmic adventure, the piano ends in 6. So you wait, was I really counting in 5 or not? You have to sort of question yourself.
This will require a few more listens to figure out what's actually
going on
happening
here. So they obviously set up lots of rhythmic obstacle courses, but when they pull off the solos, they really do it well without tripping over anything on this recording. So yeah, a high sense of technical accomplishment, but really artistic soloing and integration by all the players. This one's great. And at least on the streaming version, we end up with one more tune called For Now. This one is sort of a contemplative melody in the sax that develops into a real burning sax solo. And when it gets to the end of this track, he's really burning. Yeah, it's incendiary. And then it sort of fades out.
Yeah,
and so
it fades out.
A jazz
Why?
Fade out. Yeah, you don't hear that too often. Yeah.
When does that happen? Yeah. I wanted to hear the rest of the solo. There might have been great stuff in there. Yeah. Or maybe there wasn't. That's why they faded out. I really don't know.
Maybe his reed split when he hit that really high tune.
Who knows?
I don't know. But a nice wailing sax outro while it lasts on this tune, which may or may not be on the CD release or something, but it was on Deezer anyway.
It's on Deezer. We heard it.
Yeah. So in summation, Michael Thomas, very proficient and mature sax soloist. A great band here, especially notable this woody bass sound, nice piano solos.
Yeah, the pianist's name one more time.
Something Shore.
Julian Shore?
Julian Shore.
Yeah.
That's right.
Keep an ear out for him, or an eye out.
Hans Glauaschnig, bass, Jonathan Blake, drums.
Okay.
All very excellent musicians who play well together. And I should say that here we've got an album, after we've just listened to an album of complete standards, an album of standards or covers with then some original material. And now this album, 100% original material. So this requires a different approach, a more adult listening approach, because you're not going to recognize anything here. And so this is going to take a few listens before you get comfortable with the melodies and things like that. So as a musician, to release something like this is more of a risk. I know that he's appeared on more than 30 recordings. I'm not sure how many as a leader Thomas has done, but some artists will release a completely original album, I think too new, especially vocalists.
Right.
You sort of have to show what you can do with the established repertoire.
You got to get your voice out there.
And what I appreciate most is when, instrumentalists, rather than only record their own originals, when they also pay an ode to other players,
Right.
So let's do a Freddie Hubbard composition or a Gary Bartz or something like that to throw in there, because those tunes deserve to be re-recorded by the next generation of musicians. But it seems that Thomas here, he's got a theme with his sort of life pattern of music career and his different places, and how these cities that he's played in has affected his development. So that's seems to be a valid and mature approach, and he carries it off well. But it will require something of the listener to invest to hear these melodies and complex music, and it's worth the investment. As what's the difference between art and entertainment. The entertainment comes to you and you go to the art. And this one's well worth going to. I'd like to hear more from him in the future, and I'll keep my ears open.
I enjoyed this as well.
Yeah, this is good. Michael Thomas, if you listen to this review, thanks for playing the bass clarinet.
I enjoyed the bass clarinet.
Keep that up.
You really got me going there.
Yeah, that's a good one. And your alto playing is really good too. Coming up, I have a few more sax releases. One definite for next week.
Really? We've got more Italians. We've got an Italian thing.
We've got Italian
I think we've mentioned this before, but nevertheless.
Italians are just really good at playing things.
They are. Okay. Before we go, though, I want to end on maybe a sad note. I want to acknowledge the death of the German mezzo-soprano Christa Ludwig this week. Or at least since the last podcast, at the age of 93. So she lived a good long life and had a really successful career. She was one of the voices that introduced me to the Mahler leader back in the 80s when I was listening. She recorded with Herbert von Karajan and the Berlin Philharmonic a lot and had a long career before that. So, rest in peace, Christa Ludwig. And I'd like everybody to, if you don't know who she is, check out your streaming service and give her a listen. It was a magical voice.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rest in peace.
We probably should have said that at the beginning, but I just thought of it now.
Well, we don't want to start off on
well, we don't want to end on a sad note either.
We don't end on a sad note either. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, but there we go. All right, so coming up, we've more vocals. Well, not next week though. I'm actually staying away from vocals next week because we do have more vocals coming up.
Please space out these operas for me, or at least sopranos.
We may have mentioned this before, but I'm pretty. We both said that. We prefer instrumental music to vocal music. That's true with me, but in classical music. But there have been so many familiar names coming out with vocal recitals that I wanted to hear them, and so we've done them. And I know just from experience with my in my writing that people who listen to classical music, the majority of them like vocal performances in opera.
Sorry to hear that.
I'm not sorry to hear it, but I just wish they'd listen to more instrumental music, which is what I'm kind of trying to push them towards. So next week, I'm not really sure, but I think we're all instrumental next week in classical anyway.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I don't have to get my soprano nerve ending tape safety covers next week.
or your foreign language dictionary. You won't need that.
Yeah. All right. Great. Yeah.
I actually like breaking out the foreign language dictionary. It kind of makes me happy.
Well, we've got interesting lyrics. Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've at least guarantee you another burning sax release for next week.
Oh, I can't wait for that.
And I'm a couple others in the pipeline, just waiting for the release dates. It's kind of curious these days because the things get released on sort of unsynced timetables, whether the CD is out there or you can listen to it on streaming or it's announced when it's announced. And so you've got to keep your eyes open for when things actually become available. But there's a few things on my radar. I've got one locked down though.
Yeah.
So.
Actually, next week we will have a vocal album, but it won't be a solo vocal. It'll be a choral vocal album, and I'm choosing it because it's another one of those composer anniversary albums, and I want to make sure people are aware of this very important anniversary. I'm not going to tell you who it is. If you want to know, Tune in next week.
Tune in next week. That's right. Okay, that's a wrap then. It's been episode 12 of Adult Music. It
certainly has been episode 12.
Has, yes.
It's been episode 12 and a half, I would say.
12 and a half.
Next week is lucky episode 13.
Episode 13, yeah. And so thanks for listening to the podcast with music for the mature mind. If you made it this far, just remind you again, please do subscribe or follow us on whatever app or service you've been listening to us on. And if you'd take a moment to give us a ranking or write a review, we'd appreciate it. That will help us be noticed more in the recommended categories and help us grow our audience, reach more listeners interested in jazz and classical music. And if you'd like to contact us directly, once more, our email address is adultmusicpodcast, all one word, at gmail.com. So until next week,
give us a 5-star review too.
Nothing to lose.
If you think we're only worth 4 stars, wait till we have 1 million listeners. We need the 5 stars for the algorithm. We need to be noticed, please.
Yeah, let us get noticed.
Yeah.
Just give us that little click. But we'd also be interested in hearing from you. We've got a growing audience, but we don't know much about you on the corners of the earth, from India to Romania to Brazil to Sweden to South Africa to Kenya and other points. We've got about 730 some downloads up to this week, but not too much personal feedback.
Yeah, so, let us know who you are.
Let us know who you are. We'd be interested to know what you listen to and what you get out of the podcast. And if we get anything interesting, we'll share it in an upcoming podcast. So until next time, with Lucky 13.
And happy listening this week.
Happy listening this week. We'll see you next time on Adult Music.